Welcome to another episode of DCU Daily. Today, we have to talk about Batman, or lack thereof, because as it turns out, it seems like no Batman for you, or me, or anybody really. Justice for Batman is what I'm talking about. Justice for Batman, what is going on with you, Matt Reeves? How many years and how many idiots does it take to write a good Batman movie? I want to get your opinions on this first before I go off on it. But I'll start with you, John, because I'm sure you read the articles because you're the one who found it, sent it to me, and then I was like, what? Because we've been talking about it for weeks now. The idea that this Batman sequel, The Batman 2, is looking more and more like they potentially will move it again, because originally it was supposed to come out in 2025. Then it got moved to 2026. And it's not like they're moving it by a few months. They're moving this movie a year at a time. You know, like they moved it from October 2025 to October 2026, and lo and behold, John, now it's gonna be coming out in October 2027. That's a good 2 years past the original release date, and that puts it pretty much a good 5.5 years, if I'm correct, or 4.5 years, right? Like, because the first movie came out in like spring 2022. So yeah, it's a 5.5 year gap. Robert Pattinson is gonna be like in his 40s. I mean,
when
at that
he's
point,
the young trying to get a handle.
I mean, you might as
Yeah.
well should have just kept Ben Affleck. Who cares if he's 55 at that
he's
point?
gonna have arthritis
I don't
by
get
the
it.
time they start
I mean,
filming. Yeah.
Before I really go off, John, like, what are your thoughts on this? You found this article. Of course, there's other news about what the movies that Warner Brothers moved around in addition to the Batman 2. But let's just focus on the Batman 2 for now. What does this tell you about where this movie is right now?
That this movie ain't gonna fucking come out. Like that's what I'm thinking. Like I remember I was watching a stream of like, a couple of my friends were talking about the Batman part 2. And one of them was like, "Oh yeah, this movie is never coming out. They're not gonna want to have two Batman on screen together." Blah 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 blah. But I was like, I was kind of defending, like, but the Penguin just came out, and they still want to go full steam ahead. But at this point, I'm just like, no, this shit's never gonna fucking come out. Like, we're never gonna get a sequel to this goddamn movie. I think there's more drama behind the scenes than we're seeing. I think Matt Reeves is like, I think under this new tutelage of James Gunn, I don't think he's into it, even though James Gunn says that he's into it.
I mean, James Gunn hasn't even seen a first draft of the script for the sequel, apparently, even though Matt Reeves said a few months ago that he's done.
At this point, just hand it to the other writer, because there's the other writer who recently just did Terminator 0, which is apparently really good. So just have him fucking write it and then have Matt Reeves direct it, because at this point it's just fucking ridiculous. Like, I understand, like, fucking Stephen King has written like 15 novels at like from when originally we talked about this to now. It's like, bro, like it's not like, why are you just like, if you don't want to do this movie, then don't fucking do the movie. Like, don't fucking like cock tease us like, oh, it's gonna get delayed, but it gets delayed again, and then it gets delayed again. Just don't do the fucking movie. I don't mind it being like a one-off at this point. Like, okay, we got Penguin, we got Batman. All right, cool, that's fine. We have the Batman duology. Cool, great, end it there. I don't mind it ending, because at this point I'm just fucking done. Like, I didn't really love this movie all that much anyway. Yeah, the Penguin is great, but like at the end of the day, I'm just like, I couldn't fucking care less now at this point. Like, I'm really not caring. Like, I'm not gonna fucking believe this movie is gonna. I am genuinely gonna say this is not coming out. They're gonna keep delaying it. It'll be fucking 2040 when we get the movie, and fucking Batman and Joker are gonna fucking ride around on scooters at this point and around the fucking Arkham
Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy to the rescue.
Yeah, like that's what it's gonna fucking be at this point, and I'm just fucking sick of it. Like, I'm at a point where I'm like, I just don't care anymore. Like, the movie was fine, the show was great, but like, it's like, I like, you're delaying it so much that you have fans that are pissed, or fans that are just like, well, I'm not going to fucking give a shit anymore. And probably when the movie comes out, it's probably going to be a pile of shit now, because it's like, they're spending so much time on this. Matt Reeves, it's either he has writer's block or is overthinking every possible detail. But it's just like at this point, just give us the fucking movie. Like I don't know, just like I'd rather just have like just throw a fucking shitty movie out in theaters at this point. As Dan said, it's like even when it's bad, it's good. Like we have ice to see you, Batman. Like we get that.
The
we'll
Iceman
that.
cometh. Come on,
we'll get that.
Not
like
that
it's
hard.
just like I'm at this point. I'm just like I don't fucking care. Like I really don't. I'm excited for Superman. I'm excited for Supergirl, and I'm excited for Clayface. Those are the ones that are coming out, and I'm just like I'm excited for those. I'm excited for what James Gunn has to offer, as well as Creature Commando season 2 and Peacemaker season 2. And hell, even fucking Lanterns at this point, I'm like, all right, at least we're actually seem to be fucking getting that.
Yeah.
So, it's just like, it's ridiculous.
It is. Now, Liz, I'm gonna point us back to the article here where we got the news, essentially, and it says here the most prolific move is that Matt Reeves' The Batman sequel is heading from October 2nd, 2026 to October 1st, 2027. Again, pretty much another full year out. Originally, I think it was meant to be like October 4th, 2025 or something. It was basically like in October 2025. Now it went to then it went to 2026, which happened I think earlier this year. And we're like, okay, 1 year, he needs more time. The writer's strike, get it. Now it's a whole another year. And we still don't, I mean, I think it was as recently as a couple of weeks ago, where James Gunn said he still hasn't seen the first draft for this movie's script. So it just becomes like, a little weird, like what is happening. But I wanted you to address something here in the article. They say production isn't scheduled to get started until late summer of 2025. And they're calling it a VFX heavy sequel, which we were like, this is meant to be very realistic, but when you watch the Batman, there is a lot of VFX work in that movie. It looks really good, which is why people don't think it's VFX heavy. But a fall 2026 release, it feels like if they were going to start filming in late summer 2025, that means they're probably filming till early 2026, which would mean they would have less than a year to get it through post-production. So in that respect, I understand, but my question also to you is, how did it get to the point where we're not even starting to film this thing until late 2026? Because he's been working. Matt Reeves has been sitting on this for a few years now. Where's the delay? What happened? I mean, what do you think, Liz?
Well, we had talked about this before. I mean, there was a lot of speculation. Were they going to start filming in spring? Were they going to start filming in summer? It's just I'm not going to say it's alarming. I'm not going to go that crazy with it. It's disappointing for sure. I mean, literally no one else has brought up a project as far back as 2027. No one else. Like we've talked about 2025, we talked about 2026, but to officially turn around and say 2027, like John said, now I'm thinking to myself, is it going to end up realistically being 2028 at this point? Because it just bums me out. Like I definitely feel like we're getting Penguin season 2 before we're ever getting this second film. But I also kind of feel sad for Matt Reeves, because I guarantee you he's getting a ton of pressure. Somebody said in our chat that Twitter is going off on him, or X, whatever we're calling it these days, that he's getting a lot of hate from people. He's really being trolled and harassed. And I have a feeling, just like John said, he's feeling the tremendous pressure and the weight. He's probably seriously writer's blocked, if not just overthinking it and trying to make some perfection out of something that none of us are asking of that. We just want a continuation of this film that we really enjoyed the first time around. So I'm actually really sad for Matt Reeves. I feel really bad for him, because I'm sure he really wants to give us a decent film and try to live up to like the first one, but it's not looking great, when they keep pushing things back like this. It's a disappointment.
I mean, look, here's the thing. By the way, there's a statement from James Gunn on Threads where he kind of clarifies from his perspective the reasoning for why this is being delayed. And of course, him being the co-CEO of DC Studios, his word is, basically facts. So we will get into that. But before we get into any of that, it's just the optics of the whole thing that bothers me. Like because we've talked about how the first movie came out in 2022. Remind me again, John. I believe from the moment we heard that Matt Reeves was getting hired for the Batman movie, and then he said, "Okay, Ben Affleck's no longer gonna be Batman, and now I'm going to make my own thing." I think it was like
karma. Fuck you, Matt Reeves. I'm just kidding.
It took like maybe 2-3 years or something like that, but we get it. It's the first movie. He was gonna cast a new Batman. He had a whole new vision. We were at a nebulous time in the world of Warner Brothers because they were getting sold again, and so ownership was changing. There was leadership changes and stuff. They didn't really know what they were gonna be doing moving forward with the DCEU, and there were leadership changes at DC, Films basically, which is now DC Studios. It's a new entity, completely separate, like Marvel. So that wasn't the case, but Warner Brothers at the time was all like over the place. So I get it. They took the first movie that took a good 3-4 years to work on. But let's just step back for a second, right? I want to point out something about Christopher Nolan, who made, of course, the Dark Knight trilogy, one of the features probably some of, if not certainly the best superhero movie of all time, The Dark Knight. And in my opinion, 2 or 3 of the best superhero movies of all time in between The Batman Begins, The Dark Knight, and The Dark Knight Rises. Now you look at this screen here. Christopher Nolan made Batman Begins in 2005, then made The Prestige in 2006, and then he came back and did The Dark Knight in 2008, and then in between The Dark Knight and The Dark Knight Rises, which came out in 2012, 4 years later, he went and then he made freaking Inception. I mean, he made I don't understand. Like, he could do.
Christopher Nolan built this in a cave with a pile of scraps. I'm sorry.
It's just
Nolan. Clearly not.
Clearly not. It's just look. I've got. You know what? Like I'm
kidding. Because again, I kind of agree with Lizz a little bit. Like I feel a little bad.
I hear you. I get it. But
nobody should be getting death.
I found Matt Reeves' to-do list. I found his to-do list. It says executive produce Cape Crusader. Oh, executive produce The Penguin. Oh, write an Arkham series. Okay. Brood in the Basement. Oh, okay. So he's really getting into the mood. Work on Bex. I'm sure that means, Batman Epic Crime Saga. That's what that means. And then at the very bottom, you see almost in fine print, it says write the Batman 2. And it doesn't have a check mark next to it. It's like he checked off all the other boxes. Well, guess what, man? Here's the only thing that you need to have on your list. Write the Batman 2. Please write the.
It's
I don't get it.
We can't.
I know it's backwards, and I just realized it. It's whatever. Flip it on your end. I don't care. Matt Reeves, you need to figure out what the hell you're doing. Now, let's just get into the statement from James Gunn. Where did I pull it up? Did I have it? I thought I pulled it up somewhere. Oh, here it is. So James Gunn just put this out earlier today, addressing the article that we were looking at earlier, the whole, delay and why there's a delay. And I'll read out what he said. He said, sure, yes, it is true. The only reason for the delay is there isn't a full script. And then he says in parentheses, those of you who follow me here probably know that already. Which, yes, we talked about it. James Gunn addressed one of the fans asking him about this, I think it was a week or two ago, saying he hasn't seen the first draft for the script yet, which led us to...
I got you covered, Dan. I'm not
you.
mirrored.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I'll have to...
You can use this on a thumbnail, Dan. Full screen me.
Where's the music?
There you go. There you go. Oh yeah, do the small. I could do maybe a smolder
version. Do the
version.
smolder? Let's do the smolder version. Yeah, please do.
Okay, that's enough. All right, let's not get crazy here. All right, give you a little tidbit. There
you go. Well, okay, so James
you need to send that to Matt Reeves, and that's it. That's all the motivation he needs.
We need to send him this exact.
He's just gonna have a boner and then just write the script for fucking 3 days straight, and boom.
Another bulge, Dan. Another bulge.
Okay, well, I'm just gonna get back to what James Gunn was saying. He said Matt is committed to making the best film he possibly can, and no one can accurately guess exactly how long a script will take to write. Okay, fair, but you shouldn't take 5 years to write a fucking script. Once there is a finished script, there is around 2 years for pre-production, shooting, and post-production on big films. Hashtag the Batman 2. Okay, look, I get it for a film of this scale. It takes 2 years to do pre-production and then filming the movie and principal photography and then post-production and all that. I get it. That's the timeline for Superman. The problem is not with the fact that it's going to take 2 years to do all of that. The problem that we keep pointing out is we're sitting here in 2024, December 27, 2024, when you're doing the show, And it's been what, 2.5 years, over 2.5 years since the Batman came out. And if I remember correctly, the Batman 2 was pretty much greenlit, or greenlit in the sense like, go ahead, work on it, like here's the money to do it, because like James Gunn's definition is once there's a finished script, then it's actually gonna get greenlit. But Matt Reeves was given the go ahead to work on a sequel like pretty much the same year. It was like 2 months after the movie came out. We knew that he was going to be working on a sequel. He's had since then till now. And my list, even if it was mirrored, Cape Crusader, The Penguin, potentially The Penguin season 2. There's an Arkham series potentially. He's somehow involved in the Batman in the DCU too. Brooding in the Basement. I mean, he probably does that every day. Working on other potential spin-offs. So I'm just like, focus on the main thing. People will not care about anything else because this is John. We talked about this at the top of the show. The optics of this are the real problem, because I totally understand if they're gonna start filming this in the middle or late 2026 or 2025, then they need all of 2026 to get into post-production, and then but even then, October 2027. Why not? I mean, I know there was a hold on that date on the schedule for Warner Brothers, and they were meant to put a DC movie out on that date, which is something that we would remember when we first heard about it. We were like, oh, that's when we first speculated that the Batman 2 might move to that date. And here, lo and behold, that's what happened. But still, I mean, it's just like I said, Liz, the optics of this don't make sense to me. Like, move it by a few months. Why a full year?
Yeah, well, so Antonio in the chat is saying that there are rumors that Matt Reeves is possibly going through some personal stuff as well. So in that regard, because I think a lot of people at this point are saying, well, why don't we just get another writer? And James really hasn't come out saying anything negative necessarily, just saying, yes, it's kind of a bummer that we don't have it, but he's clearly still standing behind Matt. So I would render a guess that is something that's going on. There's something else to this story, but also certainly now, because of all the backlash he's getting on socials, if he wasn't having any personal issues, he certainly is at this point. So again, I do kind of feel for Matt. I'm disappointed as a fan, of course, just because I love the production so much and I want more of it. But I'm if we're going to get a good script, if we're going to get a good film out of it, I'm willing to wait. I can't see people really holding off for much longer at this point. So next year, if they turn around and they say, oh, it's going to be 2028, guys, at that point, you got to cut your losses, I think, and either hire a new writer and get the ball rolling and start from scratch, or just say, forget it, we're not doing it at all.
Yeah, exactly. And this is, again, I don't have like despite the fact that I've got the whole, justice for Batman and, WTF Matt Reeves and all that stuff. And yes, I've been very critical of the whole situation. And even in the months leading up to this announcement, now we know that the movie is moving back by a year. I'm not trying to like personally attack the man. Like, it's not like, yes, sometimes it takes longer to work through a script. You may have writer's block. But it's just one of those things where you're putting it comes across as they're putting the cart before the horse when it's the Penguin, and Matt Reeves is doing promotional work for that, interviews, and doing interviews not just for the behind the scenes, the special looks at the end of every episode of the Penguin, but also then talking to news outlets, talking about what his approach was and how he was so proud of what they accomplished with the Penguin. And then now he's done interviews talking about how we're basically working on potentially talking to Lauren LaFranc about a season 2 of the Penguin, and then he's still talked about there's a Arkham series. Like, all of those things are great as compliments to the movie.
Well, but like we've been saying this whole time, James Gunn has been saying a little too much, and he has been making himself a little too available. So if anything, this is a problem that he has created by constantly throwing out, giving everybody a sneak preview or a timeline or an outline of what the upcoming projects are. Maybe wait until you have a script and you're happy with it and you've got everybody signed on before you open your fucking mouth. Maybe start there. So now he's backtracking and he's trying to do right by Matt because he knows Matt is getting all the static from fans. Well, maybe you shouldn't have said anything at all until you knew for sure you had a script and you guys were good to go. This is the problem when you're constantly feeding in to the noise and giving everybody what they want. You end up fucking over a lot of other people by accident. So I think that's been the issue with James being a little too accessible, and we've been talking about this for weeks now. So here's exactly example
Yeah.
number one. This is exactly the problem that it creates when you do that.
I mean, and you know what? Like, here's the thing. Like, I appreciate all the insights and the responses, but I think every once in a while James Gunn does trip over a little bit with his words. And when he put out there that, oh, he hasn't seen the first draft of the script, he may or may not have been aware of the fact that, you know, Matt Reeves had put it out there, I think either through a post of his own on social media or answering a fan question or in some kind of interview saying that he's pretty much done with it. So those two statements clearly clashed, and then fans started wondering, is there drama behind the scenes?
It just goes to show what a fan that James is, because he's clearly really excited for these things, and that's great. But, you know, sometimes, babe, you gotta be better at keeping secrets. You know, like you can't give everything away and then turn around and be like, oh shit, hold on, sorry, we weren't ready. Well, stop talking.
Like, exactly, and again, we're talking about, like, not just the announcement today, because the thing about what the announcement today with the movie moving back by another year, we've all been speculating about it for months, and now this just feels like it's confirmation. And so, you know, it's sort of like we start looking back at the events leading up to today, and we're like, oh, that happened, so now it explains all of those things. But just the fact that he could have said, oh, yeah, Matt Reeves is still working on it. Instead, he was like, I haven't even seen the first draft of the script. And in the moment, he was probably like, it's still a ways away, but what it came across as is, oh, Matt Reeves, you know, may say that he's, you know, been working on it really, really hard. I haven't even seen the first draft, so I don't know what's going on with it. Like, a lot of people took it that way. Like, it almost felt like, you know, Matt Reeves got thrown under the bus. Probably, like, not on purpose, and that was definitely not James Gunn's intention. I wouldn't believe so. Now, of course, I do want to address Antonio Baker, who, Antonio, you are really pointing out the idea that, hey, Robert Pattinson is in demand right now. Yes, he is. He's in Mickey 17. He's in the new Christopher Nolan movie. The dude is got a lot of movies on his schedule, and that's totally fair. But, you know, and yes, you cannot just hire any random person off the street. I don't think any of us on the panel here were talking about take this movie out of Matt Reeves' hands and give it to another director. We were saying,
I'm kind of thinking that at this point.
Well, okay, maybe John is, but I'm saying, like
I said, if they go to push it another year, at that point, okay, cut ties.
Like, it's one of those things. Which, again, if Matt Reeves is working on 5 different things, if he's got his hands in all these different pies. Look, James Gunn has his hands in all of the different pies, right? Because he's directing Superman.
Yeah, but he's written like 15 scripts ever since he got.
But this is what I'm saying. Like,
CEO.
James Gunn has shown that he can have his hand in 8 different pies and still do all the work and still make the movies, you know, release date. Superman, they dated for 2025. And they're hitting that date. They're not delaying it. It was never delayed, and that movie was in development and put into development around the same time as the Batman was. Because remember, James Gunn got hired the same year that the Batman came out, later that same year, and it was pretty much a couple of months apart that we got the news that, okay, Batman 2, there will be a sequel to the Batman, and that James Gunn is taking over as co-CEO of DC Studios. So, and then we know that James Gunn had been working on that Superman script even before then. So maybe he had a bit of a head start. But having said that, though, you know, he had to then go in and set the plans in motion for a whole new cinematic universe, work on, like, you know, 7 episodes worth of script for Creature Commandos, and then he wrote Peacemaker season 2. He directed several episodes of that show. He was, you know, closely involved in, you know, Creature Commandos. He, of course, was directing a big ass feature film for Superman. But clearly, he has shown he can do that. Matt Reeves, on the other hand,
he doesn't get sleep, but you know, he does.
We get it, but like, I'm just saying, Matt Reeves is his exec produced an animated show that's on Amazon Prime, the Cape Crusader show. He's supposedly working on a couple of more spin-offs for the Batman Epic Cinematic Universe, whatever.
Sixth and Idaho is his production company, right? That's his Sixth and Idaho, and that production company is working on a lot of
different things. They are, but I'm saying, like, none of those things Matt Reeves is outside of the Batman 2, as far as we're aware. Matt Reeves isn't writing the scripts for the Penguin or Penguin season 2 or any other series. He's one of the executive producers. He's working on developing it. He wasn't the showrunner on the Penguin. So I'm like, where is all it? Like, why is there such a delay? Like I mentioned earlier, right? Yes, Christopher Nolan doesn't write all of his movies. I mean, nowadays he does, but, like, you know, when he was making the Batman movies, he didn't write those movies, or he co-wrote them with Jonathan Nolan. So his brother, of course, but he was able to go and make another big budget movie, in the 4 intervening years between each of the Batman movies, and somehow make it all happen. And I bet you like the scale at which The Dark Knight Rises was made was much bigger in terms of like the physical locations, the sets, the amount of extras they had, the fact they were shooting with actual IMAX cameras, all of that stuff. The Batman 2, there's a lot of stuff shot in the volume. They have like sets that were already built for the first movie. A lot of the same characters are coming back. And I know that, and by the way, the whole Robert Pattinson situation, it's a double-edged sword. The man is in demand, which means if you keep moving your filming schedule, eventually he's going to be like, I am busy. I got this other commitment. I can't move everything around. I'm sorry. I've got a mustache. Like CGI that shit. Like it's stuff like that can happen. So I do begin to worry now that, yes, it's still very much possible that they go into production middle of next year and they make their 2027 release date. But we thought that when they were talking about making the 2026 release date. And before that, we thought that about them making the 2025 release date. So now that it's moved 2 times, it's sort of like each time they announce a release date change, it starts to reduce that faith that the audience has in this movie getting released on time, and B, ever coming out, really, because all of these complications. Because Liz, the other thing is, this movie is supposed to take place literally like a few weeks after the first movie ends.
Yeah.
And I'm like, Robert Pattinson is going to be 6 years older than he was in the first movie.
Well, and
I mean,
again,
he still looks
hopefully,
great.
well, he does. But,
Sure.
But again, hopefully at this point, I mean, he is a vampire. Hopefully at this point, James Gunn has learned his lesson and he's going to shut up a little bit and keep a little more things closer to the vest. But now he's got this DC website or whatever the shit. So I don't know. But again, as much as you guys want to shit on Marvel all day long, like they don't jump the gun, pardon the pun, to when it comes to talking about their projects like this. They know when shit's going to be done, when it's going to be ready, and then they make that announcement. By
except when it's the Blade movie.
Well, I mean, but he's doing too much. He's saying too much. He needs to pull back. You want to talk about 2025 now? Maybe we're getting into 2026. Okay, fine, but at this point, stop talking about projects that aren't right around the corner, because this is all you're doing is whipping people up into a frenzy like this. And this is the problem.
Exactly. I'm like, this is where I hope, because to the credit of James Gunn, the Batman Epic Crime Saga is a franchise that was around and established before he took the job at DC Studios. So his approach of we're not going to greenlight anything until the script is ready, he's applying that now, and that's probably why they moved the release date, because they didn't want to rush to the 2026 release date. And maybe he felt like the extra year is going to be what they need to get this right. I get it. But there I look at Matt Reeves and say, you can't. It's again optics. You cannot work on 5 other adjacent projects, Batman-related projects, and then have the main thing be delayed twice. Like,
right.
You got to get that shit right first. I don't care. Like, if can you imagine if like after the Dark Knight, like we heard that the Dark Knight Rises is gonna come out. Oh no, not in 2012. Oh, it got delayed to 2013. Christopher Nolan's working on Inception. Like it's a great movie. And then now it's gonna get delayed another year to 20 because he's working on Interstellar, guys. Like he's busy. I'm like, focus on the main movie first, because if the Batman movie franchise itself, like the core movies, because here's the thing, now you're putting even more pressure on the Batman 2 to be good, because people are going to be like, we waited 5.5 fucking years for this. Can you imagine if that movie comes out and people are like, oh no, this is not nearly as good as the first movie? Like, you're putting more pressure on yourself to deliver now. It's that thing of, it's a double-edged sword, and I just really hope it doesn't blow up in their face, because I really love Robert Pattinson's Batman. The Batman, I think, is the best, Batman anything made since the Dark Knight trilogy, and there's a lot of potential there. Clearly, The Penguin was an amazing show, and I really do hope they come out with a second season, despite the fact that he's a scumbag, but that's the character. I get it. But if they can't get their shit together, I mean, I'm concerned, because like now I'm like, okay, we're gonna be sitting here in a year from now saying this movie's coming out in 2028, and like John said, then there might be like, well, Robert Pattinson has backed out, and they're gonna recast the role, or we're just gonna get a DCU Batman. But are we gonna get a DCU Batman? Because here's the thing, it's not the news is not any better. The grass is not greener if you move over to the DCU, because while the Bex is struggling to put out a new Batman movie, so is the DCU. And Andy Muschietti was recently on a podcast, and he was asked about it. And there's this direct quote from him in this. So let me read that really quickly. And Liz, I want to get your reaction to this because to put it into context, Batman Brave and the Bold was originally announced as part of that big, DCU announcement that James Gunn put out, where he announced like 8 different projects. Half of them were movies, half of them were TV shows. Of course, the first of which is Superman. Creature Commandos is already out. Superman coming out next year. Supergirl is going to go into production next year, as well as Lanterns. So a lot of those things are happening. But you would wonder, like, hey, probably the biggest name on that slate announcement was Batman. Like DC Comics is Detective Comics. Batman, it's the house that Batman built, and Batman is the most successful movie franchise character that they have. So they announced a Batman movie featuring Damian Wayne, his son, and which we haven't seen that version of Robin in live action before. Now, Andy Muschietti, who directed The Flash, he was attached to the movie right in that announcement saying Andy Muschietti is working on this. But then we heard that he was working on that Welcome to Derry show on HBO, which is like, in the It universe, the movies that he directed there. Now Andy Muschietti is saying the Batman, the Brave and the Bold, that project has been postponed a little bit, so I might do another film before that. What? He might do another film before? What is that? What the fuck does that mean? So according to James Gunn, let me go back here. See, now we're going to connect the dots a little bit, guys. So according to James Gunn, once there was a finished script, there's around 2 years for pre-production, shooting, and post-production on big films. I'd imagine the Batman Brave and the Bold qualifies as a big film. And then Andy Muschietti is like, I think I'm going to work on another film before that. So let's do the math on that, shall we, Andy? Andy, you're going to work on another film that will probably take you 2 years, plus the amount of time it takes you to write the script, unless you have a script that's ready to go. And then maybe by then they will have a DCU Batman script ready for you, and then you're gonna work on that for 2 years. I'm already thinking it's 2032. Liz, when are we gonna get a DCU Batman Brave and the Bold movie anytime soon? Do we need to maybe Robert Pattinson will be old enough to be the DCU Batman by then, and be old enough to have like a Damian Wayne, like literally what Manos Time said at the start of the stream. Maybe he can easily just transition to the DCU Batman at that point. I don't know. Like, what do you think about this? Ugh. I'm losing my voice. I think, Liz, you're muted.
Yep, I'm muted. I'm sorry. Listen, I have worked for a lot of different companies, a lot of different environments, surrounded by a lot of different personalities. If I hear someone is in the middle of a job and they're talking about doing another job at some point, to me, that tells me they're not very happy with where they're at, what they've got going on. So I don't know exactly what's going on behind the scenes. But for him to just kind of to put it out into the universe that, hey, I'd even be willing to entertain the idea of doing another project at some point in between all of this chaos, that's not a good sign. And that's not something that you want to hear your employees openly sharing with other people. So it's not looking good. But again, James needs to stop sharing. He's oversharing. If he stops talking about these things and let people do their jobs rather than get inundated with social media trolls, maybe we would have things in a timely manner. But unfortunately, I think his enthusiasm is now putting immense pressure on the people he's surrounding himself with. And that's not a good thing. That's not a helpful thing. That's great that you're supporting everybody. That's great that you're behind them. But I don't think he realizes the now, especially because the stuff that he's been showing us so far has done so well and people are loving it so much. I think that just increases the pressure for everybody coming afterwards. So he needs to pump the brakes. He really does. And again, I don't see this new DC fan site, whatever the shit we're calling it.
DC fan first.
Yeah, I don't see that helping the situation. I really don't.
I mean, John, what do you think about this? Again, this is just it's a double whammy kind of a day, right? Because it's one thing that we get the big, I mean, it rocked most people's world when they heard that the Batman 2 is getting moved by a whole year. And then to get a follow-up saying,
I mean,
from Andy Muschietti,
here's the thing with Andy
he might do another movie before this Batman movie.
It might not be his fault. Again, much like with the Batman, it might be a script fault. The thing is, we can't blame anybody, which honestly might be good for death threats, because apparently Matt Reeves has been getting those on Twitter. So, like, we, might be good. That may be protecting this writer who also isn't doing stuff. So I think it might be a writer issue, and I don't totally blame Andy Muschietti for that. So I think that's just him being like, okay, the script isn't ready, so I'm gonna just move on to something else. So I think we've been blaming Andy Muschietti this whole time because like, oh, he's working on Welcome to Derry. Why don't you fucking work on Batman? You're just an executive producer. It's like, whatever. Why are you doing this? However, it might be the case where it's like, all right, I'm not writing the script. I'm just kind of waiting around.
I hear
see
you.
what happens. And he's like, I want to direct another project. I want to make some more money. He
wants to stay busy. Yeah. Andy Muschietti is a director who's in demand, much like Robert Pattinson, who's an actor in demand, and I understand completely. But this is again the point, stands that hey, eventually Robert Pattinson might say, hey man, I got other things that I want to do, and I just don't want to. Even if he's contractually obliged, if Robert Pattinson's just not into the idea of playing I'm not saying that's going to happen. He loves the character. They might have to start filming next year. Then we're going to hopefully get the movie, the Batman 2, that is, in 2027. But as far as The Brave and the Bold goes, we heard not that long ago, I think I put it up earlier, that statement from James Gunn that he wasn't happy with where the Brave and the, this is from December 5th, where the Brave and the Bold script is, and what's going on with Booster Gold and Waller. So it looks like those things still need a bit of work. James Gunn said they're not quite where I want them to be yet. So there's and he said the same thing multiple times since, but it makes sense that Andy Muschietti would move on to a different project. It's similar, I think, in many ways to James Mangold saying, "Hey man, I've just been busy getting this complete unknown movie, off the ground, and I don't know what's going on with Swamp Thing. They told me that I can, I'll be working on it, but so far, like, there's no updates from James Mangold. So like I think this is where Lizz's point again was pretty good, saying that when you make those announcements, and granted, James Gunn has followed through on a lot of that stuff, and it's still what we're talking about here is maybe 2 out of the 10 things that they announced are not on track, whereas the other 8 are. Now, of course, the ones that are on track, a lot of them James Gunn wrote himself, so he has a lot more control over that process. Whereas, he with something like The Brave and the Bold and the Batman 2, he's going to other people who are working under him and saying, well, what do you got for me? And then they present to him whatever they have, and he says, well, you need to keep working on this. There's certain things that are not working, and I'm not going to greenlight this unless, you can make an improvement there. So I get it, but like this has happened with Marvel with the Blade situation. Now this is something that was basically an endemic issue with the DCEU, where at one point we were like gonna get maybe 6 different Harley Quinn projects, of which like 9 of them never happened and probably never will. But the idea that you announce something and then it takes a lot longer for it to actually come out. Now the other thing I wanted to kind of quickly point out is, granted, they didn't date most of those projects when James Gunn made the big announcement with the whole new DCU Chapter 1 Gods and Monsters Part 1. They did announce the projects, and so people do have an expectation for them. And I do wonder now, if the script isn't ready and Andy Muschietti goes to direct another movie before he directs the Batman movie for the DCU, how far back does that push this movie? Because we already know that the DC calendar for releases is pretty much filled up for next year, for 2026, for 2027. They even have a couple of things lined up for 2028. And given that James Gunn said it takes 2 years from the moment that the script is actually greenlit, I mean, John, and even Liz, you tell me, what do you guys think? Where does this movie land? Are we talking 2030 now, 2032? Is Andy Muschietti even going to stick around that long? If he doesn't see a script that's ready to go, how much of a delay are we looking at this point?
Well, again, the question is, when are we going to start cutting ties with people if we keep having these delays? And like you said, Andy himself might just say, I'm not waiting around anymore. I'm sick of it. I'm moving on. I've got other things to do. You have to make those big decisions. There's going to come a point when either, it's not going to be worth it anymore. Like you said, Dan, you keep the people waiting. They're just going to say, you know what, to hell with it. I don't care. I mean, even shows like Yellowstone had that problem. They had that big pause in between, and fans kind of fell off because there's too much content out in the world now. I have 500 other options that I can turn to, and I'm going to forget about your little project. I'm going to forget about the little ideas that you had floating around because you kept me waiting. So
Exactly.
I understand James really, shooting right out of the gate, trying to get everybody excited, trying to get everybody on board, trying to get the fans, looking forward to the future of the DCU. But honey, you're doing too much, and this is what comes of that, and this is the consequence. So he needs to start focusing on one project at a time and be reasonable about it. Not a project that's coming out in 2028. Talk about a project that's coming out in 2025. At the most, talk about a project that's coming out early 2026. But this is the problem that we have now created for ourselves. So I don't blame people for getting frustrated. I don't blame fans, certainly, but again, I don't blame producers, writers, actors. I don't blame any of them. We want to get on with our lives.
Yeah. I mean, and John, when you look at, again, this is like a two-headed monster that we're dealing with today, because it would be one thing if we got it. Just I'm not saying Andy Muschietti looked at they're putting out this new scheduling shakeup today, so I'm gonna go on a podcast and talk about the fact that
he didn't, obviously he didn't plan it like that.
But it's just from a PR perspective, for all the positive hype that we have had for Superman's trailer and Creature Commandos doing so well. I mean, Brian made some good points in the chat saying that, hey, Matt Reeves was hired well before James Gunn came into the world of DC. Even, I mean, James Gunn overlapped with Matt Reeves' early couple of years with DC because he was working on the Suicide Squad and stuff, and the Peacemaker TV series. But it wasn't, it wasn't until well after Matt Reeves has already, been working on the Batman that James Gunn got the DC Studios job that he currently has. So some of the remnant, even the Penguin was in development as a TV series and worked on some of it before James Gunn was in the co-CEO role.
And
so it's not like his problem.
In that case, it would be more likely that they cut ties with Matt Reeves and they cut ties with Andy Muschietti, because James Gunn specifically chose Andy Muschietti for Batman Brave and Bold. Why? I don't know, since The Flash sucked donkey dicks, but that could be studio meddling. Who knows? But he also defended a guy who slammed people and threw chairs at people and possibly diddled a 12-year-old. But, it's whatever. Like, that's not the first time this has happened in Hollywood, and it won't be the last. But even then, it's just it's like you built up all this stuff, and then literally one day it's now like crashing back down. It's like, guys, come on. And we're not saying it's James Gunn's fault. It's just he maybe needs to calm down. I think Jennifer Holland needs to take the phone away from him, maybe like put parental controls on the computer and just be like, James, you need to calm down. But even that, like, I don't think he talks that much, but I understand like talking too much. But it just like, I feel like, I mean, as somebody said, it might be a writer's. I think it was NTR Prizing, very interesting username. It might be a writer's room issue. All of this reads to me that Gunn is not happy with the script or pitches that he has received, and that's what I'm saying. Andy Muschietti is probably like, "Where's that script? Oh, no script yet. Okay, well, I'm gonna go do another horror movie." So I think it just is James Gunn being like, "I want this to be a tight ship. And I want this to have the best we can possibly give the fans. And with that, I have to keep delaying this stuff. And, it's more likely that the Batman stuff is not happening. But, it's obviously we'll have to just wait and see. But it's just like, we got some goodwill, and now the DC curse has come back full force. And now some fans are getting pissed, and they're upset.
Well, again, think about any job you've ever worked. If your company says something along the lines of like, "Oh, this is gonna come down the pipeline in 2028," you're thinking to yourself, "Are we still even going to be in business by 2020?" Like, it's not like that's next week. You're talking in terms of years. Nobody can get excited for something like that.
I mean, right now, I think the only project DC has dated for 2028 is a dynamic duo animated movie, which we're still wondering if that's part of the DCU or not. But nonetheless, I mean, we also have to, again, kind of like, let's kind of put a little bit of a line between the two conversations, because it does bleed over, because, the same people are involved for the most part. But the whole Batman 2 situation, I think a little bit of it is James Gunn's fault. Because if he hadn't put that statement out there, like responding to a fan on
Exactly.
social media saying, hey, I haven't even seen the first draft of the script yet, which in the moment probably felt like him saying, well, the movie is still a ways away. I haven't even seen the first version of the script. It came across as, like I said before, I haven't even seen the first draft of the script yet, so I don't know what's going on with that project. Whereas, Matt Reeves had been telling people online that he's working on it, that they're prepping to film next year. So all of a sudden, it created this like disconnect for audiences because the two contradictory statements. Now, can you imagine if James Gunn hadn't said that, and we were already wondering like, okay, more and more time is passing by, and we're not hearing any more news. And we still don't know when this movie is going to start filming. We're starting to hear like, oh, Supergirl is going to start filming next month. Lantern's going to start filming in February. So, and then they would have made the announcement and we would be like, oh, okay, makes sense, right? Because John and I speculated even that, hey, at this rate, maybe they're looking to move the Batman to like 2027. And now because of what James Gunn said, you start to wonder, well, are things taking longer because again James Gunn is looking at whatever Matt Reeves has given to him or presented and he just doesn't like it. Kind of like what's going on with the Batman Brave and the Bold. And by the way, before we keep the conversation going, Patrick, Brian, and NTR Prizing, thanks for stopping by. We haven't seen you guys in a chat before, but we really do appreciate you guys stopping in. So subscribe and hit that like button. We are here 5 days a week talking about DC, as you can see right now, and we can be very passionate about it. Now, as far as the Brave and the Bold situation goes, because yes, the Batman situation, some of that is not under James Gunn's control because the approach that he has clashes with the fact that the Batman 2 got a release date before James Gunn was really settled into his job even, right? So that's a little bit of baggage from the old regime that he has to carry on and then shepherd along the way. And he can control what he's got in front of him, but he can't, fix what was done before he got on board. So the Batman Brave and the Bold, on the other hand, I would say this is more just like, it's not his fault that the scripts aren't where he wants them to be, but, having a director, then this is where I'm like, just talk to Andy and whisper in his ear and be like, man, just don't like go out and say stuff like this because the biggest thing for me here is the way Andy Muschietti talks about this. He's not, and this is obviously he's saying he's gonna work on another movie potentially, but before this he was like, I'm working on Welcome to Derry and stuff like that. But in general, the impression that I get from Andy Muschietti is that he looks at the Batman Brave and the Bold and he looks at it as just another project on his timeline. Like I'm like, Batman Brave and the Bold is gonna be the biggest thing you work on in your freaking career. It's gonna probably have the potential to make the most amount of money. It's the biggest movie. It's one of the biggest movie franchises in Hollywood. And as a fan, and not even if I wasn't a super fan of Batman, I would still be looking at it as like, don't talk down to that movie, right? It's a big project. It's a Batman movie. It's like it's like a Superman movie. It's the Holy Trinity, one of the pillars of the Holy Trinity of DC. So that is the other thing that probably rubs a lot of fans the wrong way, that he's talking almost like, yeah, it's another movie, the script isn't ready, I'm gonna go work on a bunch of other stuff. Like, and and it's fair to have that reaction too. So I do, and like you said, John, though, it's more likely that they can just cut, not Matt Reeves, but Andy Muschietti loose and be like, we'll work with a different director if Andy's not interested anymore. Obviously, Andy was like the 8th director to walk in on The Flash and actually like finally follow through on that movie. So it's very possible they could go with a different director if they wanted to.
It shows how good that did. Look at what we got.
But yes, it's just been a rough day for Batman fans. That's all. And we got also Joker 1940 or JKR 1940 in the chat. Hello to you for the first time in the chat. And he's saying if Pattinson joins the DCU as Batman, does Matt or Andy direct it? And how do you please the director who doesn't make it?
It just would seem too impossible. Like Batman is just way too realistic for what the DCU plans to be, and I don't think that's going to be the case. And the thing is, Arpats is way too young. Not in real life, as we know, but like in terms of the movie where he's supposed to be like late 20s. I mean, obviously you can change shit and not have Damian Wayne be the Robin, but it's like that's what they want the plan to be. So like, I just don't think.
Oh, we got Ray J in the chat. Hello, Ray J.
Yeah, clearly you're a slow writer. I've seen snails write scripts faster than you can. Damn.
Yeah.
Like, come on, bro.
Yep, and then NTR Pricing saying that Gunn did also say when on the set visit for all those journalists for Superman, he said, "Hey man, if the Superman movie doesn't work out, we're not, we may not make all those other projects," which he probably said half jokingly considering all these things are going into production. But again, saying things like that puts more pressure on him to deliver. And it's one thing when James Gunn is, because again, as a creative, him being an executive as a co-CEO of DC of the new DC studios is something that's new to James Gunn to a certain degree as well. It's not like he's led a studio in the past, and he is by trade a director, writer first, not a producer. So him being in this position now, I think him treating these projects that other people are working on for him the same way that he treats the projects he has all the control over because he's writing and directing them, like Creature Commandos, like Peacemaker season 2, like Superman. It could be tricky because you don't know if the other people are going to follow through with the same level of commitment, passion, and execution that you do. So I think maybe there are some lessons to be learned here in that regard as well. Ray J saying I think it's pronounced enterprise. Oh, and enterprising. Okay. Okay, we got it. Thank you for correcting that pronunciation. So thank you, Enterprising, for stopping by in the chat, and thank you, Ray J, for correcting that pronunciation for us.
Yeah, he corrected it before, but yeah, that's okay.
I'm sorry. I just noticed for the first time. I apologize. I'm
although NTR Pricing is certainly would be a very interesting username.
Yeah.
Maybe not for out in public, but maybe in Reddit or something. But yeah. I don't know. It's all.
Eagle Eye, by the way, is potentially throwing out a theory that I think is interesting, saying maybe he's waiting for Superman to see how well that does, and because of depending on how well it does, he might decide to eventually bring Pattinson potentially into the cinematic universe rather than having him be his own thing. I don't think that's the case here.
Well, but also in the meantime, just stop talking though. Like just
exactly.
stop, then just wait, then shut up and wait.
Yes. Yep. JKR 1940 saying some people are hinting Matt has something really bad going on in his personal life. That's why he's taking it so long. It's a rumor. We don't know that. I mean, like what Ray J pointed out that he did an interview with Zoe Kravitz recently. The whole, I think it was Directors on Directors, like the variety series, and they talked about what projects they're working on, and Matt said that hey, it's taking longer than he expected, but he's still working on it. So I mean, and obviously it looks like they're still going into production on the Batman 2 next year. So it's just one of those things where now it's showtime. Like you can't move this stuff around any more than you already have, and especially because it's not like this is Swamp Thing or Booster Gold. No offense to all of those characters, but Batman is Batman. You can only get away with moving around Batman so much because people are gonna start to wonder just how much respect are you gonna give to this character who should be one of your cornerstones for this new DCU. And if the Batman Brave and the Bold takes another 5 years to happen, then people will start to wonder: are we just gonna keep getting these smaller movies like Clayface and another Clayface and another or in line with those the B, C, D level characters rather than Wonder Woman, Flash, which they're holding a beat on development as well.
Yes.
And we have no idea what's going on with Paradise Lost, and people are starting to wonder. Yes, you're focusing on all these smaller characters or these characters that we aren't as familiar with, but what about the ones that we know so well? Because a Batman movie will do well at the box office. I mean, David Zaslav should be like, James, what's going on with that Batman movie? What's going on with both?
I need to clear my $20 trillion debt that I have from AT&T. So
But anyway, guys, we can talk about this all night. Clearly, we already have. Let us know in the comments if you aren't watching live what you think about this whole situation with both of the Batman movies. And of course, if you're on the live chat, thank you for letting us know what you think. We have, of course, been talking about your comments. And while you're here, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and hit the notification bell so you know when we go live. We are here 5 days a week. Of course, we're not here on Saturdays and Sundays yet. Maybe we'll think about it in the new year. We'll see. But Monday through Friday, DCU Daily.